us deciding to talk to each other for this. And yeah.
So I am deeply excited off the back of Where Will I Be Buried to still be at Flux Factory and be here with Liz. We figured that it would be advantageous to those who, even though we know lots of you and have known a lot of you for some time, for those who are new to either of our practices or both of our practices or to sharing space with us, we'd like to just outline how we met and the work we have done together to this point. And how we got to Flux Factory. So I'll start a little bit of that. We met on the very first day. It's really cute. We met on like the first day that I landed to go to school out west. I was in the airport, and I'm very reclusive and quiet, as I've explained to Lexi and Liz before this talk started. And I was just walking through very lost. And Alyssa was there, and she just looked at me and was like, "Hey, are you going to this place from some span in the airport?" We were quite far away, and I was so moved by how just bold she was. And I was like, "Oh, is this what college is going to be like? Just bold people all the time?" And it's not quite that, but it was really great that this was that way, because I think it started this really profound working and personal relationship over these last like 5 years that it's been, give or take, and whatever time is at this juncture where we're all very remote. So yeah, Liz and I, we sort of encountered each other doing a lot of dance and movement work in dance workshop at our school, and understood each other, or at least I understood Liz as a mover first, and then understood her practice of weaving, and she taught me a lot about looms and how they work, even though I don't think I could weave anything, but I do feel like I could understand what someone is doing if they are weaving to this point. We also did a project together called Reclaiming Rosas, which was a reimagining of a dance piece originally called Rosas Dance Rosas, which is very, I think, luminary in the modern dance world, but still a little obscure. And it's a dance about femininity and understanding your place in space in your body through very rigid movements. So we collaborated on that together and sort of made this world together. And Liz, I'll turn it back to you for your projects and your specific work as well.
Okay. Yeah, so I guess Rosas was the first time we worked together on like a project that was ours and not just kind of movers in someone else's project. And I mean, I think something that was really special about that, and we talked about this the other day, but when I remember that project, the big screening itself almost felt like anticlimactic, because the thing that was the most visceral for me of that experience was just getting to meet with, who all was it? Like Eliza, Tia, Mara, and you and me. Was that it? We just got to like meet and kind of love on each other through this really chaotic time that we were all kind of going through together in the environment we were in. And when I'm left thinking about Rosas, like that's what I think about and that's what I feel. And then the actual performance of it and the screening of it was something that was viewed and other people kind of took in, and it kind of felt like this very private thing that they were taking in. So yeah, first and foremost, that felt like just a big ol' care practice that we were engaging in with each other. And I think that thread continued whenever we did the skins kind of the first kind of skins project that I wanted to do. And I was really shy about it, and I didn't want to use my own body in it because I'm still kind of navigating how I feel about that and whatnot. But I wanted to make a project about the three witches in Macbeth and tying them to the three fates and Greco-Roman mythology, and then reimagining them as just these kind of all-knowing Black femme figures, and what it means to kind of superimpose this other tattered skin over. So we worked on that project together, and again, when I think about that, I think less about the actual project with a capital P and like more about just measuring each other for the outfits and chit-chatting and like talking shit with each other beforehand. Because that, again, felt like another iteration of this just caring for each other more than it did a project. And so, yeah, that's why what I was kind of saying earlier about it feeling very fitting that we have this opportunity and we're kind of colliding with each other again in this capacity in this moment. It just kind of makes sense. So yeah, I think I would be interested to hear about, Brittany, a little more about what you did for Where Will I Be Buried and your work with kind of grief and loss in general, if you could say a little bit about that.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for turning it back so seamlessly. Last week I just finished being in the how do you say, the programming aspect of the show Where Will I Be Buried just finished. The website itself will be live for the next year. The show evolved from a sort of a conversation, but as well as a meditation and thought project and thought process about what grief looks like for Black, Indigenous, people of color who also identify as queer in some way, or trans or LGBTQ in some way or respect, because the curators, Muse and Catherine, their vision, I think, was really understanding that there is a very particular experience of death and grief for people who live at those intersections. But there are also so many people who live so differently at those intersections, right? And I think the breadth of the show really shows that. My work for the show and the work that I do in general is grounded in a history practice, academic history, personal history, histories of the mundane. In particular, I take up, in the piece that I did, I took up Audre Lorde, who is an absolute Black lesbian luminary to me personally, and I know to many, many people who are here and who are not here. But I found out through therapy, my therapist asked me to read the Cancer Journals, which were journals that she wrote near the end of her life. And I had only ever really engaged with a young Audre and a healthy Audre, for lack of a better term. But in reading the vulnerability she had near the end of her life, I wondered what kind of space she lived in when she wrote the Cancer Journals and things like that. So when I looked into it, I found out that she chose to live the end of her life on St. Croix, where I was born. And the world has opened up since I found that out. And I feel like I just entered a new phase of life where I couldn't stop thinking about. My sister was born the same year she passed away. And I feel like it's hard to forget that once you know. And so I just wanted to, in the piece that I did, or in the poems that I did, imagine what her final moments were like. And what her transition was like on St. Croix, in a mythical space that was sort of like St. Croix, but something in between her passing and my sister being born, what that might have looked like. So it was Where Will I Be Buried was such an imaginative space, a generative space. I feel like I was more of I learned more in that space than I taught, which I think is something that's been important to carry at this moment. And I think Flux Factory is a very special venue that can hold all these things, like enduring friendship and thinking about grief and thinking about spaces that don't exist tangibly. So I'm happy to still sort of be here. I feel like I'm kind of still riding it out. And so I feel lucky to be continuing that with Liz, especially. So, yeah.
Well, heck. Whenever you were talking about that, this brought up what we were talking about yesterday when you said that this project was kind of rooted in history. so we've talked a lot to lead up to this conversation, and it feels like we've just had different iterations of a different direction it could go each time. And one thing that we were really thinking about the other day was the idea of documentation in general and what that means right now, and how kind of subjective it is to, well, it's kind of silly because we will read whole experiences as someone else has documented them, and it's just obviously based on that person's view of it. So it's like, who knows what was really happening, and I don't know, I guess I'm just thinking about how the kind of fickleness of documentation is, or how fickle it can be, and then what does that mean when we're kind of scrambling to figure out how to process what we're going through now, and then what does that mean when we're trying to use that experience to move forward. And then we were talking again about you introduced me to the idea of first responders that are like historical first responders, and I didn't know that existed. And I kind of, I don't know, in a way I'm thinking of your project with that piece you did with Audre Lorde. It's not a first responder situation for like collecting that history in that moment, but there's something there, I think. Anyways, if that resonates.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that, and I really want to hold on to that. Yeah, that reminds me, I do want to, Liz and I talk like this all the time, and as she said, we've done this talk in multitudes and many times before, and the iteration we're giving tonight is very special because it's nice to be seen and witnessed. So we want to ground and give space for the fact that we are talking to an audience, and sort of be direct about what we want the next just about hour to look like. And we just really want to ground in this talk and this experience of listening and thinking together as a continuation of our care practices as artists. As Liz said, the creative spaces we've made together have been spaces of care. And we really wanted to use this talk, conversation, etc., whatever word is best to you personally who's listening, just as a time to be close with one another and practice that as widely as we can, because it's really important now for a multitude of reasons that I'm sure I don't have to say, because they look really different for everybody, even though we're all in this collective moment. So next life dreaming is we hope to have a conversation that dreams us toward the next moment through reflection. And that moment could be after we hang up, or it could be tomorrow, or it could be 2021. We don't know just yet. But I think this is a practice in trying. So we really appreciate you all being here for that. So, yeah.
What you just said, how this big moment, like this big collective moment, is just kind of a culmination of all of our little moments within it. So I think I really appreciate you specifying that and naming that, if you will, that yeah, I guess we decided we wanted, at first when we were talking about doing this, we were like, ooh, like, how do we imagine this like giant collective future where we can all just exist and da 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 da. And that was like a month ago. And in that month since, I know Britt's life has changed drastically and my life has changed drastically. And then now we've kind of shifted to thinking about what does our next life look like? And like how that still is important when thinking about like it's easy to be bigger and think more outside of yourself and forget that our little experiences are the experiences that make the big collective one. And that, so we have just kind of been stewing in that. And I've definitely been, at least I maybe should speak for myself, I've been stewing in that and trying to make sense of what's going on with me and like, why do I keep feeling like I'm getting displaced and what does that mean? And how do I kind of move forward and make space and find space for myself? And what does that mean in the larger context of everyone else doing the same thing and going through the same moment and whatnot. I'm changing my orientation again because the sun keeps changing its orientation. So oh, here we go. And I think one thing that I've been feeling a lot lately, and I don't know if this resonates for you, Britt, or anyone else, is, well, I guess a little personal context. I was living in Brooklyn for the past few years, and with coronavirus, I obviously like lost all my work and whatnot with the rest of them. And then I lost my housing in May. So I just got a car, which was a good move for me, it turns out. And I just drove to Oakland to stay with a friend, Susie, whose actually piece of work is behind Britt. If you look to Britt's screen, that's a print by Susie McMurtry, who we love very dearly. And she like opened her home to me for 6 weeks, and that felt really good. And it felt like, oh, I'm getting somewhere. And I think this whole time, in this whole period of being unsettled, has really left me longing for something that feels certain for tomorrow, which I think is maybe a lofty goal, but something that feels steady. And so I've been really looking forward to finding a home and making a home space. And I keep inching closer and closer to that. And then I literally found my dream. And the next day, we get evacuated from the fires that are happening, that are coming right up onto the property that I found. And my friends who I'm going through this with, their places as well. So we've been evacuated and uprooted again. So obviously I was, not obviously maybe, but obvious to anyone who knows me, I was in like the deep, dark places of my despair and like really feeling hopeless and feeling exhausted, because I think it's so much energy to keep hoping for something that feels really far away. And so I guess that's something I've been thinking about and going towards the future, is how do you keep the energy up to keep hoping for things that you can't feel just yet or can't touch just yet? And how do you keep dreaming and hoping when it feels a little unwise to do that, because it just keeps getting taken away, if that makes sense. So I guess that's on a kind of darker note of the hoping and the dreaming, but I think it's still kind of pertinent because it's exhausting to be so like open up and vulnerable to that, I guess.
Yeah. I'm just thinking that I think it's I really deeply appreciate you sharing that every time you do. And I just want to make space for that. But I think about coming out of a show about grief and death, there's this very, I feel like I'm starting to have this very morbid reputation. And it's very funny to, whenever somebody says like that you said that it was a little bit of a darker turn, but I think it was just something authentic. And I think something that I've really been thinking about lately is that some of our dreams do span out of the darkest moments or darkest moments. But I just think that they're the moments that are realest to us and that ask the most of us. And they ask for our closest selves and our deepest selves. And that's I think sometimes that is ourselves. It's kind of yucky at the core, and you don't want to look at it all the time. But I think the word dark is so funny for so many connotations that but I think it's okay that it's dark. And I think that that's something I really have gotten better at sitting in because of the space I have been given at Flux Factory to do the show, but also that the space that has been demanded of us, that we make in ourselves every day to make it through this moment. It is dark and sometimes it's really ugly, but I think we have to tap into that at this time, or at least I think I have to tap into that. I can't speak for how anyone else is moving through this. But yeah, that's why I really appreciate you opening with being vulnerable. And I want to do the same. I have been in a very a period of long stasis, I would say. I've been, since I was asked to stay home from work on about March 13th, I want to say, I have been home in New Jersey pretty much since then. There haven't been any large geographic moves, and for most people who know me, I move around a lot by choice, and because the people that I love are far away as well. And as a Caribbean person, I think movement is a part of me. And so it's been very odd to live in this new stillness and this new way, and particularly to create in this new stillness and this new way. And yeah, life has shifted drastically. I recently left my job due to, I think, very unlivable labor conditions in a lot of respects that just sort of came to a head, and that COVID just sort of said, here it all is. And I felt that I was faced with the decision to either shift my life or let that the work and the labor asked of me shift me. And I didn't feel like I wanted to lose myself in that sort of commitment to something that I didn't really feel honored by or respected by. So I quit recently, which feels sort of like swimming upstream in such a time where the work that we do that pays and sustains is being held on a pedestal, but the things that nourish us and keep us alive, if they're not that, they're not. So that's what I'm really wrestling with, and this talking to Liz and having you all here feels like stepping into something more authentic. So I'm really glad for that, even though it has been very strange and eerie and sort of just making it up as I go. But in the interest of authenticity, making it up has gotten me here. So for better or worse, that's what things have looked like. Yeah.
Yeah. It's I want to say interesting, but that's such a throwaway word, I feel like. But it's interesting that the I mean, obviously, like, this moment has exposed a lot of just conditions that we were just moving through, and that was just taken as normal, and we work this job and we do this thing and da 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 da. And I think that it's something that has maybe in my personal life provided a little more clarity, because in working with like Flux and a few other opportunities I've been able to have in the midst of all this movement and uncertainty, it really has felt like I'm like stepping into something that feels a little more authentic. And I think that maybe because, I mean, I lost my work, and like the kind of hustle mentality of like living in New York and working all these jobs and doing this and like running yourself gone, I don't even know, was taken away. And then it's just opened this door to actually accept opportunities that I wouldn't have been able to be open for and make space for before, because I was working so hard to like grind, or whatever that means. So yeah, it's interesting that in this kind of moment of chaos, I was able to make a living wage because the government pulled through once in their lives, and that I was able to like just have time to sit with myself and figure out what might feel good, and what do I need out of a home? Like, what do I need out of the place I'm going to be in? What do I need to feel every day when I'm waking up and working? Like, do I want to be surrounded with people? Do I need alone time? Do I want to be an artist? Like, what does that look like for me right now? And I think this has been able to bring a lot of clarity and opportunity, in a way, of just knowing how to maybe move forward, and not knowing how to move forward, but knowing that I want to move forward, and that there are a few things I want to take with me when I do. And then there's a lot of things I would like to leave behind. I don't know, just doing.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I want to ask you one of our sort of topical questions, if you will, in the interest of transparency for everyone.
A whole bullet point.
We're gonna hit the bullet points, folks. You know, we're ushering this train somewhere. You know, but that got me to thinking, like, how do we make that space to come to these realizations? Like, how do we make space for ourselves, and how do we take care of ourselves? And we can stew, and you can answer, or I can answer, whatever feels.
Well, Britt, it goes back to what you were saying about sitting in the dark and having to like we didn't have distractions in a way. So you just had to sit with yourself and sit in those dark places that we don't like to lean into all the time, but that you have to lean into in order to be honest with yourself and therefore those around you about what you need and what you want and how you want to move forward. So I think the first part of, I mean, I don't know exactly what it looks like because I don't feel healed or whatever, but I feel like I'm learning how to feel that way. And I think the first part is this confronting those parts of you that you don't really like to look at, and just really sitting with it and getting to know them very well, and then hopefully going from there.
I really appreciate that. It just got me to thinking that I think there's been a really intense emphasis on what is collective about this moment, right? There's a lot of what is being shared, images that are being shared with us all the time are like mass demonstration, mass collective this and collective that, and people are, all of these words that have been around movement spaces for so long have become part of the public imaginary. And in that, though, I feel like in this new way, the individual has almost vanished, except for in places of death and grief, like people who we lose to the multitude of disasters happening right now, right? I feel like those are the few times we're asked to think about individuals and what they meant to us. So I think about how I appreciate you reflecting that back, that it starts with ourselves, because I feel like I get very lost in all that's asked of us collectively right now, to show up for people outside of myself, or to show up in my neighborhood, or to show up in my country being used very loosely. But it's just really fascinating that I think at this moment when I need myself the most, I feel like sometimes I'm the hardest to access personally, which is so strange. And I didn't think of that until now. So, yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, Britt. I think I'm kind of stuck on what you said about the individual kind of just disappearing, which I think is true and I think should be true. I think there should be a lot more of that happening. But then what you said about the individual only existing whenever they're being lost, is that, how did you phrase that?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. And I guess I have two thoughts, and one of the thoughts is that I feel like my perception of the individual when they're being lost is that they're like a symbol of themselves more than they are themselves. You know what I mean? So I don't really, that's just something I'm thinking. I don't know where that's going yet. And then I'm wondering, like, how does the individual also get lost in that? Because when we're thinking, we were kind of talking the other day about the hurricanes that were expected to happen, that I think you shared with me ended up being considered tropical storms by the time they hit shore. But we were talking about you and your mother, like pre-grieving this, and all of those individuals that might be lost and that we don't know them, and that your mom was holding them so close in her heart. And I'm just thinking, like, are they Hmm. Like, how do we perceive those individuals? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if them as individuals is what's being held in the aftermath of being lost. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. I see what you're, yeah. I'm thinking in that reflection of my mom and I's conversation. For context, I live at home with my family right now, which has been really important and revelatory at this moment and necessary for me to do. But in that reflection we were having, the people in the storm's path meant so many things to us in the span of like 24 hours of like, they represented, they became so representational of fragility, but also of storms come up the East Coast and storm instead of going to the Gulf sometimes, or sometimes they go over Florida where my dad lives, or things like that. And it became so many worries held at once. And even still in thinking about, trying to think about life at its most every day, we were still hoping to see ourselves in that. And I think that's what was very, I think that's why it stuck with me what my mom was talking about, is that she was looking, she has this very innate way of looking for other people, of finding herself in other people and seeing herself in experiences happening around her, which I hope to have a fraction of, because she makes it so look so easy, and I think it's really hard. But I just think, yeah, it's so hard too, because we live so, it's funny to say this at a digital event, but we live so digitally now that everything is almost, it's signified when it gets to us. I feel like the things that I'm thinking about how, for Where Will I Be Buried, I originally wanted to do a performance at Flux and share space and not record it. But this moment demanded recording. Liz is smiling because I don't ever want to record anything that I make or do, because I like it to disappear once it's gone. But this moment demanded that it stay and it exist in a new way. And that sort of just becoming, digital things don't exist in a tangible touch sense, but technically that poem will forever be recorded and forever exist in that way. And it's just fascinating how so many things in our lives now have become symbols, because what we're able to touch and what we're able to experience in person is very little, even as things increasingly reopen on a government schedule. Things are not reopening on personal day-to-day lives, and some lives never closed, right? Some lives have not had this experience of stay at home, right? So it's fascinating what has become, what people have become, and what the things that we make have become, and how we represent our lives. You know, I don't know if that resonates, but that's what I think. So
Thank you. You said the other day, and now I'm thinking about how we've been talking a lot about shifting, and how whenever, like, to get through a moment, you are kind of continually shifting and losing parts of yourself and rebirthing parts of yourself, and just like shedding that old to get to the next. And there are things that are lost in that, and I'm wondering, you said the other day that you didn't want a past, like when you're talking about documentation and recording and all of your feelings and thoughts about them, and existing on the internet and in video and in sound. You said you didn't want a past version of you to outlive yourself as you change now. So now I think that's standing out to me, like, even more than it did the other day. I mean, I was like floored when you said that. But I'm wondering what that means in, like, what does that mean when you're like changing and growing? Like, do you discard the old parts, or do you want record of them, or do you ever look to them again, or do you just forget about it and then move on? And it's like, are you you as you are in this moment now, or are you you and the culmination of all the yous that have been you up to this point? Does that make sense?
Yeah, the question itself is just like, it's a really great question. I want to take a moment while I think to also let people know, if you feel called to, like, journal, let your thoughts be known, let them exist. Share them with the people around you if you want. Like, Lexi put it very well when she said, we're allowing people to eavesdrop, but we also know that you are human beings with thoughts and feelings too. So make them known if you need. But I think when I said that I didn't want a past version of me to outlive myself as I change now, first of all, that was off the cuff. And I was surprised when I said it too. I didn't know I felt that way. But I was talking about how for Where Will I Be Buried, I had a really hard time. I didn't show myself on camera at any of the programming, because I felt as though I was learning so much more than I was able to give. And I was receiving so much that I wanted to sit with. And that ultimately, I did not want a past version of me. I didn't want to wake up from an event the next day and feel like I no longer resonated with what I said, because what would live of me was the thing that I said yesterday that I no longer believed to be true. And I did not want that to live longer than the me that disagreed with myself. So I think the parts of me, I'm a Gemini, by the way, if that helps. Yeah, Gemini sun. So that just made me laugh at my own behavior. But I think that the forms of myself that I reckon with are in conversation, and some of them need more space than others at times. And some of them do, I think they depart. I don't know if I let them go, because I have a very hard time letting go in general. I always really struggle when there's those really nice, like, Instagram holistic care posts that are like, we have to shed, it's the full moon. And I'm like, girl, or whoever you are, like, how do we do that? You know, I really struggle with with shedding, which is why I really admire you as an artist, because you make shedding look very easy and aesthetically sound. And I think it's really hard. But I think parts of me just depart when they're ready to. And I'm trying to build an awareness where I can see them off and be like, that part of myself did leave. But I feel like sometimes I look back and I'm like, oh, where'd that thought go? Or where'd that part of me that thinks that way go? And it's just, you know, it's had its course. And there's evidence that it was and that it existed, because there are people around me who remember me that way, or there are journals that I've written that I remember myself that way in. But I feel like sometimes I just look up and notice where I am, as opposed to actively letting things go of myself. What about, I want to reflect that back to you because of your work with skins, or if it has nothing to do with your skin work, but do you find that you discard parts, or what do those parts of yourself that maybe were here yesterday or were here before, what does that sort of departure look like for you?
I guess I should have been ready for a...
It's hard, right? It's a good question.
I don't know. I think because it's something I think about so often. And I'm gonna disregard this for a second, because I'm thinking about Shane.
Yeah.
Snake, for context of anyone who doesn't know, I had this snake Shane, and I remember one time, well, all the times, we lived in Colorado Springs, and it was a very dry climate, and getting Shane to have like a complete healthy shed was incredibly difficult. And because it was just too dry. You needed a little more moisture. And he was always like wriggling around on the rocks trying to like get, and just little patches would come off at a time. And it was so sad. I just felt like he was disappointed that I wasn't giving him like the environment he needed to be able to go through this process like every 2 weeks to a month. And it was a lot of like trial and error. And I eventually learned to have this like homemade sauna type situation where I had a humidifier and like a plastic tub, and then I had a big towel that would go over it, and I would just like bathe him in this, and we would take a shower together, and then I would like put him in this tub and it would steam up, and I would try to like moisten him and like prepare him to be able to loosen his skin in that way. And something that you just said that I can't remember exactly. Oh, no, I was talking to you like 4 years ago or 3 years ago, however long, about how frustrating it was I couldn't get him to shed. And then I was talking about something about I don't remember exactly, but something I was making and I couldn't get it to like work the way I wanted it to work on the loom with the nylon. And you like really made it clear. I can't remember exactly how you worded it, but you said that you saw my work just as much about interrogating like the processes, or no, the environment that you're in that enable or disenable, is that a word? You to be able to shed and move through that space. So I had never like blatantly thought about the environment that's conducive to being able to reflect and like process and da 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 da. So I think I'm thinking about that right now, you saying that, and I'm thinking about that and how it relates to me personally. And I think that I actively think about that a lot, like the process of trying to grow and shedding. I say that all the time. It's like my favorite buzzword. And so I think that that feels like I'm on top of it sometimes, but I think in reality, it's only well after the fact of growing through something that like you can't process something while it's happening. And I'm not going to change that with how much I try to overthink about it and like really dig into all the details. I think I'm just going to run myself silly trying to give words to something that doesn't have them yet. And I think it's oftentimes like years, maybe a year or however long later, when I look around and notice where I am, and I'm like able to kind of take a catalog of what do I still have of me that was there in this moment, and what do I not have that I think I would like to have again, and how do I work towards that, and what do I just let go and let that be the me that was then. And yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I'm really sitting with it, because I'm just thinking like I don't even know how to count how many me's I've met since like since like March 13th or whatever, when this whole period of this brand new paradigm started to exist, I think, for a larger group of people, at least in the United States.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to act like I can only come from my experience, but I also recognize that the breadth of experiences that were happening on the globe concerning this moment in all its ways. But I can't imagine the amount of me's that have come and gone. I could maybe identify two. And one of them was, where will I be buried? And I think the other one was like yesterday, when we're like, okay, we're going to do this talk and let it just be what it is. But I think that I'll appreciate really like sitting with that as the fall continues and the seasons shift and change alongside, and as things get cooler, because I think fall is a very reflective time. And for the first time, I feel like the summer was, whereas it's usually celebratory in a different sense. Yeah, I want to ask, that reminds me though, that I wanted to, because you were talking about your creative process 3 years ago, which, full disclosure, I also don't remember what I said to you, but I'm really glad that it felt.
A screenshot of it somewhere. It was via text message.
Yeah, I'm glad that it has stuck, because again, that me, IDK, you know. But I wanted to ask you how it has felt to create in this moment. But I want to also create does not have to mean anything tangible or that would be displayed at an art show. Just whatever you are creating that is helping you sustain you. What has that felt like to make or fashion or make real for yourself, you know?
Mm-hmm. I think when I think about what I've been trying to create, it's just like, not to tie it back in, but I feel like I'm really trying to create a life and like find community, and which is like an insane time, it feels like, to do that and like go to a new place and try to plug in and meet people and have a job and da 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 da. And I think that that's where most of my energy has been going, is just trying to create like a routine. Like I wake up in the morning and I eat oatmeal and drink coffee, usually like when I'm alone, and then I try to, I don't know, look at my email and try and have an interview. I've been doing doula work, or at least working for an agency that I theoretically can do doula work with if I ever get any clients. So I've been trying to just make a life in those ways. But when I think about, I guess I stayed in my friend Jules's dollhouse for the summer. I subletted it for a month, and it wasn't very lived in whenever I got there. And it was this really, like, I didn't know how much I needed to home make and like make a cozy space and unpack all of my little bits and things and put them on the wall and just make a space that I could just sit in and really just sit in and just kind of soak it all in. And it felt like a big hug whenever I cleaned it out and like put all my stuff out, and I had my little windowsills with all of my little knickknacks and belongings. And I think I focused a lot on trying to make that space feel as homey as I could in the time that I knew I would be there, because I didn't necessarily know when the next time was going to be that I had my own little like box of cozy. And that felt like an exercise in hope and faith a little bit, is what making that felt like, because it kind of felt like through the action of making a home, I was trying to will a home to be, or to show itself, like at the end of all that time period. So yeah, I guess that's where most of my creative energy has gone, is just trying to create a sense of place and home. And that's felt like hope and faith. So the short answer.
That's really powerful. That's so concise and beautiful. And it makes my chest just feel so warm and nice. And it reminded me that the stuff behind me is stuff that I put up very recently, because I was like, okay, it's like month whatever of this year. It looks like this is going to be the move. So I'm going to put some stuff up that reminds me of creation in general. And so Susie's work is here, and painting my friend Eliza did, and postcards that our friend May has sent me when they were traveling and doing their creative endeavors, and like just all kinds of, and a poster that Nia got me once. And I'm saying their names in case they're here, or if they're not, I hope that they hear the love that I feel for them. But just seeing these things and reminders of, I think I've been trying to create sort of personal histories and linkages back, even though more so linkages back to the people that I care about, and knowing that they have been here with me at some point and in some way. That has been very important to me, which is something I wasn't doing at first, because I feel like I was in a lot more of just doing the very basics of like we're living today. We're going to do it. We're going to show up. Even if it looks the same as it has for the past 100, we're going to do it and we're going to try. But it's meant a lot to just create those linkages back. And a lot of my work has to do with memory. And so I think at its most essential, doing memory work for myself is not something that I do a lot. I usually do it with respect to telling history well, or telling history accessibly, or telling history in ways that people can understand. And so just doing that for myself at its most basic, just being like, oh, the people that I love made this, or they were doing this when they gave this to me, has meant a lot to have in my space. I've also just been doing the most like joy bringing, like simple tactile things like drawing or like reading things out loud, just because like who's going to tell me what I'm doing in my own room, you know, like who's going to tell me to not read out loud? Me? No. So it's been really nice to just play around with the things that I like and play around with joy in the same sort of, in the same space, but in new ways. So, but I'm still shocked that I produce new work. And I am just like, that process, I could not tell you how those poems came to be. I just was, I don't have anything like to say about how they arrived. They just arrived because they needed to exist. And now they do. And I don't consider myself a poet. I'm trying to embrace that I have now written poetry, but they just arrived as they've needed to. And I think that creativity and creation has been that at this moment. It just arrives as it needs to, and I can't force it. And the sort of trying to be a working artist or a living artist, I'm alive and I create, and that's the best that I can do. And it's working in the ways that it nourishes me. And if other people witness that, that's really powerful. But if they don't, I have to do it for me. So, yeah.
When you say memory work, can you say more on that, on memory work?
Yeah. I think that memory for me is a practice. I have, for a lot of different personal reasons, I have struggled with memory in the past. And so for me, memory is very much something I have to practice, or I feel that I have had to practice to do, to feel that I'm doing it right. And, or I used to feel that way. That's something I'm reflecting on. But now I just see it as nowadays I feel like I see memory as showing up for myself and seeing, and the work of memory just being able to tend to myself and have an understanding the ways that my bodies are holding memories, even if I can't write them out or share them with others. That it's that work of engagement with myself. But I think remembering is a practice and is work from what I've seen. And what I've seen in the fields of history outside of the academy, especially, because I think a lot of history in the academy is regimented, and but I think actual history and lived history is more creative work. So I hope that helps.
No, it helps and it hurts. It helps and it hurts. I feel like comforted by what you just said, and also confronted. Like I feel like you just kind of looked at me, because I think that's one of the things I really admire about you is your approach to memory as a practice, and it's like a muscle you work on, and that's, I think, really beautiful and really powerful and really brave, because like it sucks to remember stuff sometimes, you know. And I think I spend a lot of energy actively, I don't know, I think I'm in this spot where I'm both starting to understand how your body holds, and it will release too, depending on what you're physically doing and how you're moving through space. And that's not always up to you. But at the same time, I really want it to be up to me. And I really don't want to remember what I don't want to remember right now. And so I think I'm very inspired by you kind of confronting that time and time again. And I think that I have a lot to learn from you. So
thank you. I feel the same way. I feel, yeah, I really feel the same way. And I try to make that known every day, but then I also am trying not to do too much. Whatever that means anymore. But I don't know, you know, now I just, that makes me want to talk about, because I'm seeing people pop up in the chat and be really great. And I love you all so much. And it's reminding me though that Sai and Solomon in particular have both been talking about caring being very hot, and that has just been such a mood lately. So I really want to talk about just like, I don't know what has love looked like for you or meant for you, and that's off the cuff, to be transparent. That's just something I feel like.
You're asking me that?
Yeah, I'm asking us and each other and everyone here. If you want to answer inside, that's okay. But if you have anything to share, please feel free.
I think, what's the word? I mean, I feel time, and especially because I've been so disheveled this year, and I've been so out of place, and I've been so reliant on people, which is very hard to feel that way, I think. And it's even harder when the people that you're relying on are showing up over and over again. I'm like, can you, oh my, it's so hard to accept. Mm-hmm. And I think, I don't know what to do with it, so I just get kind of pissy sometimes, and I just get quiet and closed off, and I don't know how to, well, I don't know exactly why it is so hard to feel that other people love you and care for you, and their actions are showing that too. But there's something about it that's really hard to swallow, but then once it gets down, it's good. So I think, I don't know, maybe how you're saying memory is a practice. I think accepting that love and that care is a practice. And it's also, I don't know. I guess right now I started thinking it feels a little I feel very fortunate and held, and that's just showing up over and over again. How the heck was I able to leave one bad situation and be carried through it the entire way, and then land somewhere so cozy, and then something else happens, and I have my friend Nathan and his family is just putting myself and my two friends up in this really dreamy lake house situation when we're technically evacuees, but I'm chilling right now, you know, and I feel I keep saying this, and I said this to you earlier and to Lexi, I feel like I should be suffering more, but no one's letting me. I keep kind of, I don't know, going through these things, and time again, I just have so much love to rely on, and that feels very fortunate, but it also feels very silly and random, and I don't know, you know, because I'm thinking about the evacuation shelters in Santa Cruz and how they were full after the first 2 days of evacuations, and I'm how am I fresh here, and I have somewhere to go and somewhere to go be held. That's not a set up evacuation site or something, and how are there all these people who are filling this place that don't really have that? So I don't know what that says, but I just keep thinking about that, which is a little bit of a tangent from, I think, your question.
No, I think it's important though, because it just made me think how hard it is to, I was talking about this recently with my therapist of just it's just so hard to disengage when everything is so deeply personal and nearby, and to feel that deservedness. Well, I don't think that deservedness is very deserving of love and care is very held as a virtue or as a value of culture in this country. I think there's very much a It's not even quite, I don't want to say like pull yourself up by the bootstraps, but it's like an emotional version of that, of like, you have to be able, I think there's this very common notion that like, you have to be able to love you and yourself, and you have to be your own emotional center. And you do in some respects, because you're only living in your experience. But I feel like this moment for me has asked me to just like rip that all away. And I have to either love as hard as I can, or I'm just like not here at all, because I think love has become so active. Because how do the people you love know that you love them if you don't tell them now? Because you can't just make plans with them, or you can't just say, hey, I'll see you at X, Y, and Z. I'll see you at Flux. I'll see you at the gallery. I'll see you at, it's not like that anymore. And I think when an active practice of loving is being asked of us, and we didn't do that the day before quarantine started in New York, and the day after we have to now start to do it and ask for what we need and do love as work and do love as our everyday. It's not surprising that it's like, what am I doing? I feel that way all the time of like, what am I doing just like at home, safe and sound? Like, should I throw myself into things more to support others around me? Like, am I doing enough? Am I like, how do I reconcile my safety with other people's unsafety, right? But it's like, at what point do we not fight our own safety and allow ourselves to be loved? And I don't know, because I also really struggle. I was telling Lexi and Alyssa before we started, like, the support for this talk was stressful and overwhelming in the best way. I was just like, wow, people are showing up. That's wild. And to be loved in that way so openly is still very uncomfortable. But I'm trying to lean into it and be honest when I feel that way, because it's so hard. Yeah.
Britt and I were like spending a lot of time trying to figure out how to mute all of your faces and videos, because we couldn't handle seeing people like show up. We're like, I don't know if we can do this. And
we were like, okay, should we ask everyone to just black out their screens? Like, how do we just like present and like pretend this isn't happening? But Lexi right before was like, it's a little bit of a process, and where if you want to, we can. And we both made a very like tentative decision of, you know what, let's just do it. And I think it has helped the atmosphere and the point that we're making, or trying to engage with. So yeah, loving is hard. It's hard. It's tough, but it's the worthwhile. It's hard because we haven't done it,
Yeah.
Or I haven't done it.
It's the practice of it. And what I think, I don't remember exactly what your question was now, but when I think about what standards of love have changed since this, like, I have really high standards now. Like, they're through the roof. Like, if you're not actively loving on me and showing me you care in your actions, and like, I just don't know if there's time for like anything less, anymore, is how I feel about that now.
Yeah, I feel that. I feel like I am just like, I do so much less of the posturing of like, oh, how will I look if I just love this person? I'm like, you know what?
Just do it.
What if I don't get to love them tomorrow? Let me love them today. And I always talk to myself in very fatalistic terms, so that might just be my inner dialogue, but it works to like.
It was fatalistic, but it was also like those little books my grandma keeps on the little coffee table that you read like an inspirational but morbid quote every day, and that keeps
that inspirational and morbid is like, that's probably all I could ask to be. But yeah, I really appreciate that.
Oh shit, I'm at 3%.
Go get your charger. Let's see. While you go get your charger.
In this now.
What'd you say?
How long have we been chatting?
We are at about, we've got 15 minutes till 10 on the East Coast. So I feel like our last question, we can hit our last of, not the questions, but our points of departure, which are, what have you been daydreaming or dreaming lately, / what do you hope is next for you?
Oh,
Yeah, I don't know why we chose to end this way, but this is where we're at. So, but we're gonna do it. You know, we'll fumble through. We'll make our way.
Oh, can you say it one more time?
Yeah. What do you hope is next for you? / what have you been dreaming or imagining lately?
I would like a home. I would like to settle in for a little while and just really focus on that space. And I don't know, in my biggest dreams, I think all the love that I'm feeling near and far would manifest in my friends, and those people would be able to come be in my home. But I think that's getting a little too lofty for the times. But that's my big dream, is just to have all the love in one room and like eat some food together and snuggle. But I guess my more maybe realistic dream is just to find home and routine and keep feeling the love that I've been feeling and keep learning to accept it, because I don't think I've quite fully gotten there yet, but I really like how it feels when I do feel like I'm getting there. So I would like to keep working on that. And it's a dream to feel, I don't know what that feels like when it's completed, or if it ever does feel complete, but yeah.
You did great, and you were all worried. That was such a good answer.
You saw me back away.
Yeah, my dreams also, I guess they're the loftiest, but they also involve a lot of hugs and a lot of just simple time in a room, unmasked time of full facial expressions and smiles and things like that are, I guess, the wildest dreams now, but my most tangible. I hope to continue learning in the ways that I have, in this sort of solitude and in this sort of space of introspection. I hope how to learn to do that as a regular thing. I dream of a person who can do that all the time. And I think I'm getting better at it because I'm doing it now and it's going okay. I just dream of everyone having a day that feels safe for them. And that might be super lofty too. And it doesn't have to all be the same day, but that is like what I hope is next for me and everyone, that everyone can access that feeling for themselves. And I dream of more spaces like this. This has been, this feels like a wildest dream of like, yeah, me and Liz are gonna do a talk and it'll be whatever we want kind of, but we'll do our best to make it coherent. And I feel like that is very much a fulfilled dream. So,
well, thank you, Brittany.
Yeah, thank you, Liz.
Thank you so much for talking with me in this format. And thank you, Lexi, and everyone else who came together to make this whole month and a half of programming and make this space for us to do what we want, basically. Like, it's been really cool to experience. And thank you to our buddies who are here and are new, and thank you for coming. And I just saw a message from Sai pop up, and I don't know if Lexi was going to announce this, but originally we were going to have like our Venmos up to then like redistribute to several different whatever we found. But one of our friends, Sai, has I don't have the post in front of me anymore, but one of our friends, Sai, is doing some funding efforts for a couple in I think in New York. I would actually, I just sent the post to Lexi, so if Lexi wanted to
yeah, Lexi just dropped it in the chat for everyone in the Zoom chat. So Sai is raising money. They are spearheading this fundraiser. All of the information is on the GoFundMe page. We would like to direct you there. It takes out the work that we were going to do of just redistributing any offerings or funds. So if you can just direct them to community, that would mean the most right now. I think helping others to feel that sense of safety. So Thank you, Sai, for organizing that. Thank you, Flux Factory and Lexi and Nobody's Fashion Week and Liz and everybody here. We will have a transcript available, a full text transcript within the coming week of the show. That's just something for documentation and access. Moira is doing their visual representation and reporting of this talk, which is forthcoming. Lou is also doing their reporting. So if you need more of this kind of energy, you can get it. There will also be a recording, which will be captioned and available in the coming weeks, but we encourage you to stick around Nobody's Fashion Week online for free 99, from my understanding. So I'm very excited to engage with it as well. Yeah, Liz, do you have anything else you wanted to add?
I'm just wondering why because at first when we were like, ooh, what day should we do this talk? We're like, ooh, the day after the full moon, to have that kind of soppy energy. And I'm kind of wondering now that I'm just gonna get off here and probably cry a little bit. And
yeah, I think we
decision. Yeah,
we have these very like wholesome visions, and we're like, yeah, we're gonna do it, and it's gonna be totally great. And now I just feel very tender, and like I don't want to be seen again, but I know I'm being extreme, and I hope to see you all again. And I send and receive the love of the people here and send it all back to you tenfold, because it really feels different talking to Liz in front of people, and seeing you all talk in the chat and stuff. So thank you. Yeah, it's time to cry.
Yeah, it's time to cry. I hope you all get to cry a little bit. I see Solemn, I guess, crying. Okay, I love you all a lot. Thank you again.
Yeah,
everyone. And I don't know if Lexi has any closing remarks, or if I should just red button it now. Someone guide me, please.
I can just chime in to say, like, I don't really have closing remarks, and I feel like I don't really have anything to say to follow such a wonderful conversation. There's just so many gems to sit with, but thank you both so much for being so vulnerable and for opening up your friendship and your conversation. It was such a pleasure. You know, I feel like I just met you both, but I'm already like I feel the love in this space, even through this virtual sphere. So I'm super grateful, and I feel like it was just the best way to start off our programming. So so much gratitude, and thank you to both of you and to everybody who joined.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
This tonight. Yay! Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so just the housekeeping things, just keep following along. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Oh.
Bye.
Bye, Lou.
No, now I'm just looking and I'm like,
I'm not actually leaving. I'm just watching everyone.
Yeah, I'm leaving last because
Bye,
everyone. Bye. Bye. Take your time. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Jamie. I do. Rana, everyone. Love you. Bye.
I know this has post-show energy. Oh, it's great. Bye, you guys. Bye, everyone. Bye.
Yay. Verena, are you there? It's so late. Oh my gosh. Hey, James.
That went really well. Oh my gosh.
Oh, that
was magical. You there? Hey!
so beautiful. I'm so glad we have it recorded, because I feel like. Oh, yay.
That was
Hi, Verena. How are you?
Hi.
Hi.
And good night.
I will sleep
Yeah,
soon.
what time? It's like 4 a.m.
Amazing.
Uh-huh.
I
Thank you
will
so much for
try.
coming.
Guten Abend. Yeah, it's 4 o'clock. Now I will. Yeah,
Okay, go to sleep, sweetie.
you too. Or have a nice day.
Okay.
Night, sleep
Look at
well.
you.
See you soon.
Oh, someone wants to join now.
Oh,
Sure.
who is
Let them
it?
in.
I guess we could let them in. Sure.
Hi, Christy. I think the event's over now.
Oh, hi.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
Is this over? Did I
Yeah.
miss it?
Unfortunately,
Just ended.
Ah,
it's recorded though. We'll post it on YouTube. Nobody's Fashion Week on YouTube.
sounds good. I just want to say hi to Liz and Britt, but no worries.
We literally just wrapped up like 35 seconds ago.
Oh, that's okay. No worries. Thank you.
Have a good night.
Bye. Take care.
That's so funny. That literally felt like closing down a show and having somebody wander in, like or like knock on the door. You know?
Right, like, I'm sorry, everyone's gone. Here's the brochure from the show, though.
Crazy.
Aw, yay! Congrats.
Yeah. So
We're
I guess
live.
we'll
I feel
have
like
to.
we should like
Yes, like the first two. First one. We'll have to combine our two videos, I think. So whenever
right.
I'll
Yeah, I can check